So let's talk about Andrew Johnson. Andrew Johnson. So Andrew Johnson is such a mess. Andrew Johnson comes from Tennessee. He was extremely poor growing up, and he comes to represent Tennessee, and he was very pro-union, but unfortunately he was also pro-states' rights. And as he rises in the ranks, he is going to be a ardent supporter of the concept of maintaining the union for the benefit of the concept of a complete nation state, but he is also a avowed racist. He did not believe that blacks had any business having anything close to human rights. He's just not a good dude, just not at all. It's really hard to find anything nice to say about Johnson in this regard. And Johnson is just he's a brat. He throws tantrums when people say anything about him. He quite literally throws fits. Um, Anyone says anything at all negative about him, he quite literally has a full-on tantrum. So during this period, he is just gonna be a full-blown brat. And a brat that's also a racist. Eerily familiar, but a huge problem. So, what are we facing during this time period is a failure of the president. Because if we still had Lincoln, we would have been okay. But instead, we have Johnson, which gives us the gateway for black codes. What are the black codes? Well, the black codes are essentially state laws that allow the South to regulate the lives of African Americans. And these are pretty terrible. What does it do? It allows for former slaves that they have been granted freedom by the 13th Amendment. You are free. But the black codes essentially suck all of that away. How does it do that? Well, it says you are denied the right to be able to testify against whites in any sort of court case. You're not allowed to serve on juries. You're not allowed to serve in state militias. You're not allowed to vote. You are allowed to be arrested by the authorities, and you can be arrested by the authorities if you do not sign an annual contract for a job to prove that you are not a menace to society. Basically proving like you're a good black man, not up to any no good. These black codes also prohibited African Americans from owning land in many jurisdictions, and it required in many places black men to get permission from white men to go places, to be able to gather with other black men. What? Super messed up. Super duper messed up. Basically, It was another way to say, we're having slavery. We're just not calling it slavery. It's like diet slavery. I don't. Ah, it, it's the sunken place. I just, oh my God. So let's talk about something that is a little less depressing. Let's talk about someone who looks terrifying, but is actually amazing. And that is Thaddeus Stevens. Now, even though he looks like he should be on someone's porch for Halloween, Thaddeus Stevens is a badass because Thaddeus Stevens was a part of the Radical Republicans. And Thaddeus Stevens saw how much of a jackass Johnson was. And Johnson was fighting all of the Reconstruction efforts. The moderates didn't believe that African Americans were going to be able to accomplish getting suffrage, which, if you are not familiar, suffrage is the right to vote, which that should be a given if you are considered a enfranchised individual. Should have been a given, but they didn't believe that blacks would be able to achieve suffrage in the majority of states. Many of the moderates did not believe that this could be achieved. Johnson, picking up on the fact that the moderates were like, we're not sure, we don't know if we can go through with this, Johnson just started hammering away at this, and he starts vetoing every single possible action that's coming through at an attempt at trying to get through a civil rights act. Because, yes, way back then, we are getting an attempt at a civil rights bill. But Thaddeus Stevens, he picks up the mantle and he pushes way, way long ago when Congress actually did things. He pushes Congress to circumvent the presidential veto and gets Congress to actually go around the presidential veto and get the Civil Rights Act passed. And this is where we see, for the first time ever, Congress doing something and undermining Johnson. And with that, we get the passage of not only the Civil Rights Act, but the emergence of the 14th Amendment. So we had the 13th Amendment that ended slavery. Now we get the 14th Amendment, which gives equal protection of citizenship under the law, regardless of race. Now, that seems oddly vague to a lot of people because one would think that that would include everybody. Some people think that means all people. No, it's just men. And some people think, does that really mean all men? Does that really mean black men? Does that really mean all black men? Does that really mean any men? Does that really mean voting? It's going to get splitting of hairs very, very soon, leading the way to having to pass the 15th Amendment to go, yeah, duh, we mean African American men get the right to vote. I can't believe we had to clarify this. But this was a big freaking deal. Now, Johnson's going to run again, but the fact that Thaddeus Stevens was able to pass this and was able to get the radical Republicans this motivated was a big deal. Now, Johnson, for his part, he's going to use this to try to motivate his base to be able to say, oh my gosh, the radical Republicans, they're totally these terrible crazies, and they're so radical and dangerous. You can't trust them. They're plotting to murder me. They've got these conspiracy theories. You don't know what they're going to do. They could eat babies. Ooh, they're dangerous. They're vicious. There was no plots to kill him. You know, if anything, they were probably at home like, oh my God, I hate that guy. I could totally kill him. That's as far as any one of them had ever gone. They were like devout, nonviolent individuals. Come on. Half of them were Quakers, like seriously. But Johnson loses, and we do see the push for a shift away. Now, part of the reason why Johnson loses is, as I said, he was a jerk. And though there were a lot of people that did like his wildly racist ideas, they didn't like him. So a lot of people were sick of him personally. His racism, they weren't sick of, but him, they were sick of. So what we see is that the issue at hand is much more the concept of going through what's happening as a nation is one of wild racism and less of his issues of being just a jerk.